Hi, Misha here, and for once I'm going to talk more about the models or toys or whatever you like, as opposed to in-universe history, because we have a new subline from Hot Wheels, the Star Wars Select series. These are die-cast and larger. Kind of reminds me of the Eagle Moss's special line. Not the XL, but not the normal. But we have 8 of them out now. There are 2 variants, although I don't have those because the variants are only in their paint, and I don't really care about paint. That's also why I'm not really going to call this a full review, because if you want a full review, you probably want someone with working eyeballs to do it, but I thought we'd talk about them nonetheless. And these have been released in 2 waves so far. Wave 1, we began with 01 here. An X-Wing, a T-65, specifically Luke's. Number 2 would be a standard generic TIE Fighter. Number 3, you've actually seen in a previous video. It's Boba Fett's Slave 1, the Firespray. And to round out the first wave, we have the Razorcrest from Mandalorian. So a pretty good selection. 3 pretty iconic ships from the original trilogy, and 1 new ship from, well, Mandalorian. That was the first wave that came out in the spring, and wave 2 just came out late summer, early fall. And it began with one of my favorite ships, if you know, the Jetty Interceptor, specifically Obi-Wan's, obviously prequels. Going back to the original series, we have Darth Vader's TIE Advanced X1. And then we have, of course, the Millennium Falcon, which I'm actually surprised they waited this long to do, because it seems like something most lines start with. And finally, rounding out at number 8, we have the T4A Lambda-class Shuttle. In Return of the Jedi, it would have been the Shuttle Tydirium, but they don't actually name it like that. It just seems like it's generic. So we have 3 kind of named ships and 1 more generic. And the chase variants, as they call, you can find a battle damage / weathered version of the Razorcrest. And in the new line, there's a battle damage version of Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. So that makes up the 10 that we've been given so far in 2022. With that, let's get up close. At least I hope I'm pointing the camera in the right direction. Beginning at the beginning with the X-Wing. And looking at these, they don't come with the standard stand. There aren't many videos out there on these, but the stand lets it rotate around and tilt a bit depending on the model, but it definitely isn't coming off because it's a ball and socket. And we've seen this with other series. It's kind of a neat stand. It does have the ship's name type down here on this plate, and then it's a 2-piece thing. I don't know. Yeah, they come apart. They come disassembled and they just snap together, which is good. At least if this part does break or someone 3D prints a replacement, you can keep your base. But yeah, the ship does plug into it easy enough. And probably won't come off, although they do get loose and can wiggle wobble around, but we'll see. So these are officially die cast, and number 1 here is not my favorite. For one, okay, they want to start with an X-Wing, that's fine, but it's so kind of cliche. I like it when different lines kind of do the random weird background ships. I find that neat. But I get, now the center part here, including the engines, is metal. The wings are partially plastic, partially metal. The guns are soft, rubbery plastic, and the nose is a soft, rubbery plastic. So it's actually not that heavy, but it's not that light. And of course, it does have opening wings. And one thing in its favor, this is one of the better opening mechanisms that I've seen, even looking at the previous Elite series and the Titanium line. And I don't know, it seems like people have a hard time getting the X-Wing opening quite right. For example, on the Elite series, when it's closed in, this center part wants to rotate around. It's kind of loosey-goosey. But on this one, it's actually tight, open or closed. And I do like that they got the engines in the back right, as far as like the depth and everything. What I'm not so crazy about are these rubbery guns, because they are a little bit off-center. Of course, they're easy enough to bend back. And kind of the same goes for this nose, rubbery nose. But I know where they did it in case it takes a nosedive, it won't chip. And also if a kid throws it at another kid's face, it won't hurt. Not that we ever did that as kids, right? But it does have decent weight. Again, the wings are mostly metal until you get to the gun part, and the center part is almost all metal except for the nose. Now, no opening canopy and no glass or plastic clear. It's just there, but it's just painted. No landing gear dropping down. But, you know, I paid $13 shipped for it. So for that, and size-wise, and looking at it in my hand, you know, it's a decent size, really it is. 4 inches, maybe 5, plus the wings. I'm happy with the opening mechanism. I just wish the guns were a little straighter, made of a more solid material. But number 2 is a different story. The TIE Fighter, the standard version. And at first I wasn't sure if I was going to get this. I have a number of TIE Fighters in the Titanium series. I even have a couple of the newer ones in the Black series. And I have the original Elite one, which is maybe one of my favorites. This one's kind of in between, so I hesitated on getting it for a minute. Plus, for whatever reason, I had a harder time finding it than I did many of the others. But I broke down when I found it for, I think it was like $25. No, 23, sorry, shipped. So it was a little more expensive. And was it worth it? Well, in actuality, yeah, it's a good size. Noticeably larger than the Titanium, and not that much smaller than the Elite. But what's nice about it, it's all die-cast metal. The wings and the center part. But the Elite, the big one, even though it has moving parts and everything, the wings, the solar panels, whatever you want to call them, the radiators, they are plastic, with the center part being metal. Now, the old original Titanium, it's all metal like this, but of course it's smaller. And that one does have an opening canopy and some nominal glass. Again, this one's all painted. But this reminds me of like a toy from the early 80s when I was a kid, which is that's a good thing. Again, it's all metal, and this has heft. And if you smacked a kid in the face with this, it wouldn't be fun. No sharp edges, but it's all metal. And on top of that, there's not a lot of visible pins or screws. I'm sure there's some, but... And everything fits together tightly. There's not wiggle wobble on the wings. This one's really nice, honestly, and one of my favorites. And to be fair, I like the TIE Fighter. I actually hope they do more, like the TIE Interceptor, TIE Bomber. I'd love to see a TIE Striker. I actually like that design in this series, but yeah, nice and metal. So I'm actually glad I picked this one up. And the next one you've seen before. Boba Fett's good old Firespray. Slave 1. Even though Disney has kind of dropped that name in recent years. This is the only one so far that plugs in a different way in the back. I'm a little disappointed it's not done in a way you could display it either way. But, hey, you can have it upside down. That's kind of neat. Unplugs easy enough. And it too is almost all metal. The skirt's metal, this part's metal. Your guns down here do rotate, at least between the two positions, forward and down, but they are plastic, which, you know, is kind of expected. It'd be hard to make these in die-cast and keep detail. And part of these little winglets rotate, and they are keyed together, just like the guns, so they rotate together. It's nice that there's a center axis. So like the X-Wing, this has moving parts. Here it is in its ground mode. And do this to put it in its flight mode, as it were. And of course this cockpit is just painted. No plastic, fake glass. There's pros and cons to that, but it is what it is. It's got some good heft to it, but it's not as heavy as the TIE Fighter, but it is quite dense. I've always liked Slave 1, but it's never been my favorite design. But I do like it for being unique. Definitely a ship outside the box. I always thought the size is a little weird. I never saw where there was room for a couple of people in the cockpit and then 6 passengers / prisoners. I don't know. But it's neat that they did it in the series, even though it's not a unknown ship. At least it's not one of the basics. They could have picked something. Sometimes I have a hard time figuring out which hole this goes in back here, because there's a couple of screw holes and there's all the gibber gabber. Let's see where there. I think it is a little harder to plug in just because of the design. I think that's a screw. Welcome to my life. Maybe that's it. There we go. So, yeah. That just kind of hangs there on its little stand. And number 4 is actually the reason I decided to try this series out. Din Djarin's Razorcrest. By the way, I paid about the same for Boba Fett ship, about $12, $13 shipped. And that's actually why I bought this one. I was wanting to get a Razorcrest. Didn't pick one up when the small-scale Hot Wheels came out. So when I was looking earlier this year for one, this was actually cheaper than the smaller version. The small one they wanted like $15 for. This one was on sale for like $10, $11. So I thought I would try this fancy Select series out. And good introduction, I would say. It's quite heavy, about as heavy as the TIE Fighter. Engines are metal. You might think they would be plastic, but they are not. The body is metal, even the bottom. In fact, I think the only plastic are the guns, and they aren't a soft plastic like the X-Wing. Excuse me. They are a harder plastic, more like Slave 1, and it's a good size. Back in my hands, maybe 4 inches, but it's got a lot of girth to it, a lot of boxiness. So it's definitely, it feels like $10, $12 worth of metal, frankly. And it definitely seemed worth it over the little one. You get more metal, a little more details. Kind of got a gloss paint. Like I said, there is a chase variant of this. But I just took the one that was a good value. Another neat design. It looks like it's half gunship, half warship, half freighter. And it's sad that it got destroyed in Season 2. But, hey, at least got to hitch a ride on Slave 1, so there's that. And that actually completes Wave 1, Batch 1 of these new select critters. Yeah. When Wave 2 came out, it started off number 5 in the series with, frankly, one of my favorite designs, the Jetty Interceptor. Specifically, this is Obi-Wan's, for what it's worth. And I have mostly good things to say about it. A couple of dings, but overall, I like it. I will say, standing here on this kind of carpety thing, the table is ever so slightly tilted forward because the back legs are slightly higher than the front because of the room I'm in. So it wants to tump forward. But if I set it this way, it's fine. But make sure if you have it on a shelf and it's not level, you account for that. The other thing, it is the first one I picked up and thought, this is a little small. But to be fair, this is a small ship in universe, the ETA-2 Actus class. And it's not tiny. It's still a little bigger than the old Titanium and bigger than the Hot Wheels canopy there. But in other ways, it gets a lot of things correct. For one, it has all the guns. It has the 2 on the side and the 2 in the front. Typically thought of as 2 lasers and 2 ions. I bring this up because that's a mistake made for the original Titanium mold casting. And while the Hot Wheels version corrects that, it doesn't have the next feature. The radiator panels, the wings, open up. Which again, the original Titaniums did, but the newer Hot Wheels do not. And it's kind of nice when they open, they actually have a small detent. They slightly, it's a soft detent, but it's there, so they don't have a propensity to fold as much. So that's good. Now the main body is all metal. The panels themselves are a plastic. They're probably too thin to make a metal. I think if you try to make these out of metal, it would look very tacky. So even though it's a little small, I think much bigger would look kind of gaudy, because you see how large the canopy is. And we do have 4 moving parts. And we have one more that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure exactly why they did it, but the R2 unit, the astromech unit, rotates on the side. Again, not sure why, but I'll take it. I guess so you can have him either facing in towards the pilot or out that way. Yeah. He moves. And he too is plastic. But overall, I would have to say this is probably my ultimate ETA 2. Because it has all the guns. It has the moving wings. The other things it really missing, it doesn't have landing gear, which is fine. And it doesn't have an opening canopy, which is again fine. But for the most part, it combines the best features of the old Titanium and the new series. So, yeah, Wave 2 is starting off strong for me. But number 5, let's see. Darth Vader's TIE Advanced X1. Kind of like with the Interceptor we just looked at, it's a little front heavy. Almost every model of the ship, because of its design, is front heavy. So just be mindful of that. And it's a good size. And based on the cockpit, and that was tight. Based on the cockpit and guns, this would actually seem to be a slightly larger scale than the TIE Fighter standard. But of course it's got all the back room and panels. Like the TIE Fighter, it's all metal. Panels, center part, and most importantly, metal ball. No moving parts on this one. We have guns that protrude. I'm going to be completely honest. This has never been my favorite design in the show. I don't hate it. And I think with the Jetty Interceptor, it kind of gives a certain lineage that I really do enjoy. But I actually like the standard TIE Fighter more as a look. Maybe it's because it reminds me of Soyuz. Don't know. But with that said, if you're doing one of these in Diecast, really good job. It's a good size. It's actually maybe a little wider than it is long, which is authentic. And again, it's all metal. And pretty heavy. And again, there's a chase version of this that is battle damaged from presumably the Battle of Yavin. In universe, unlike the standard TIE, this does have a hyperdrive. I think it's like a class 3 or 4, so not the fastest, but boy, that does plug into the stand tight, so far anyway. And it does have basic shielding, and most places say it has an ordnance launcher. So yeah, an upgraded TIE Fighter. And speaking of the battle damage on number 5 here, number 6. And apologies, I got off of my numbering. You know, number 4 was the Razorcrest, number 5, the Interceptor, number 6, Darth Vader's, number 7, of course, we have to have the Millennium Falcon. But it's not the Millennial Falcon because it has the round dish, so there's that. And the one that actually damaged Darth Vader in the Battle of Yavin. We've had a lot of Millennium Falcons over the years. Now, I do have the Elite version and the standard Hot Wheels. Again, this definitely fits tight. I'll give it that. Come on, there we go. We'll see if that loosens up. So we have that wonderfully flat hamburger-esque profile. No real canopy detail, just some paint there. The dish does rotate, although it is quite tight. And it doesn't move up and down, it just rotates. What's kind of neat, the top gun rotates. There. Sorry, point. The dish rotates, the top gun rotates. And somewhat interestingly, and this is something you don't often see, the bottom gun rotates. Typically on little diecasts of these, even bigger ones, the bottom gun's where your stand plugs in, so it doesn't have a lot of detail, but not on this one. So you have top and bottom gun turrets that rotate, and you have a dish that rotates. So that's pretty neat. And I actually like how the dish is kind of set at an angle, because in the show it moves up and down, so it can be more vertical or not. Kind of like that it's angled a little bit, gives a little more dynamicness. And based on the detailing, this would seem to be the Millennium Falcon as seen in Empire Strikes Back. It's not bad. But the reason I bought this, the first couple I told you I found for $10, $13, and I paid more or less full price, 20 something for the last two we looked at. This one I actually found for $8 shipped. So you have to wonder if the price, and it just came out too, I'm not sure why. So not only did I buy one for me, I actually bought a second one for J-Ro as a little gift, because we often debate Star Wars. And I just thought for $8 it was kind of a fun little tabletop or desktop gift. And it's good for that, and it has good detailing. Again, it's the size of the palm of my hand, and it's actually quite heavy. It's all metal except for the moving parts. And, well, it has some screw holes and stuff on the bottom. For $8, I'm not knocking it. What do you think? But with that, this is Han Solo and Chewbacca's old ride. Number 8 is their new ride, at least as of Episode 6. The T-4A Lambda-class Imperial Shuttle. Shuttle Tidarium in that movie. And this one I was actually very excited to get. I actually had the toy of this from Kenner when I was a kid. I think it was my biggest Star Wars toy. And it was pretty neat. Big wing, quite a bit of storage space in the back, cockpit for a couple of people in the front. Even had a boarding ramp that came down. Get this up here. You can tell these are newer because they're coming off the stands. So, what do I think about this? Size-wise, it might be the biggest, all told. But that's just because we have big wings. The nice thing is, it's pretty much all metal. Metal top wing, metal side, metal fuselage and cockpit. And, you know, these guns might even be metal. I think they are. Yeah, this might be the one that's, along with the TIE Fighter, well, both TIE Fighters, pretty much all metal. Here's our back with our engines. In universe, this is a relatively large craft, about 60 feet long. Carries up to 20 stormtroopers, or 1 Emperor. And it's pretty prominent in the whole show, so I wanted to get it. And in this mode, I really like it. There is a small issue, though, in my mind with how the wings fold up. There are detents. It's kind of interesting. They kind of counter against each other, and they will sit like that. Looks pretty good, I think, with the wings kind of up. But I wish there was maybe a stop, and they do kind of come off, because you can collapse them all the way in. Like so. But they kind of want to spring out. So it's kind of weird to explain. It's like there's and so they kind of pop each other. They're almost like they're keyed, but they're not keyed. I'm not sure. Or even magnets. There's some definite force and give and play going on. But you can get them situated to look pretty good and even. I think one thing is in the package when you get it new, they're a bit off center. But coming down, they really latch in good there, and they're actually in detents so they don't flop. And I'm pretty sure that's what they were intending for this mostly to be displayed in flight mode since, you know, you don't have gear and stuff. And it looks pretty good coming up halfway. So the wings could be done a little better, but they could have been done a lot worse too. And again, they, in my opinion, are quite nice in the standard flight mode. And I'm impressed that it's all metal. So, while it may not be 100% perfect, it's pretty good. See, even doesn't want to fold up even when you do that. And that kind of rounds out our first 8 issues minus the chase variants in this Hot Wheels Select. So there we have it. Are you proud of me for not getting into the weeds about lore and universe stuff, tech specs? I'm kind of proud of me. Here's the light on just in case it helps. When we round up, kind of interesting looking at the ones they picked. We only have one Rebel fighter, the X-Wing. And we have 2 TIE Fighters. We have 2 Mandalorian flown craft. Of course, we have the Jedi and the Millennium Falcon, too. And the Shuttle, which, to be fair, was kind of used by everyone. And it's kind of interesting to look at the pairings. We have, Obi-Wan ship, Luke's ship, kind of different eras. And then we have standard and advanced TIEs released, same order. And then Slave 1 and the Millennium Falcon, which definitely were adversarial ships from Empire Strikes Back. And then, of course, the only one from modern Star Wars, the Razorcrest. And then, the Shuttle, kind of a more generic vehicle, but an iconic one. Interesting thing, I'd like to see more Rebel ships. I'd love to see a B-Wing or a Y-Wing. Unfortunately, I probably will do an A-Wing first just because it's an easier casting. Heck, I'd even like to see a U-Wing. As far as the older ships from the Clone Wars, an ARC 170 would be great. Or one of the droid, like a droid tri-fighter would be kind of neat. TIE Interceptor, I think, would look really good in this, or a TIE Bomber. That'd probably be quite heavy. As far as kind of secondary ships, I'm not as into those. I kind of like the standard ships, but I have to think about it. And as far as shuttles, we got plenty. I actually think the Marauder shuttle from Bad Batch would be kind of neat to have another shuttle. That's just me, though. The transport would be kind of neat. Or even the Clone Wars era shuttles. Again, these aren't super detailed. They don't have opening canopies or figures. They don't have landing gear. But they do have moving parts where it counts. And they are majority metal. And they are priced right. At least, like I said, picked up the majority of these for $13 or less. Only paid full price, 20 something for a couple, like the TIE Fighter that I wanted. But it's something fun. I like ships. It's neat that they're doing the smaller scale ships, but I'd actually love to see a line of capital ships. A Star Destroyer, a Mon Cal cruiser, the Tantive 4. That might be another. I bet that'd be a good one for them to do. Anyway, but I'd love to see, a Venator Star Destroyer, Providence class cruiser. I'd love to see them do larger scale ships in this size because they could be pretty much all metal. And I think they just look really neat. But what do you think? I think for the money, they're a pretty good little value. And they're definitely an upgrade from the standard Hot Wheels. And they just kind of remind me of classic Diecast. So I felt like doing a video. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. It's raining here right now. As always, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time. Disco mode again. I don't know why they have this setting on the light. I really don't. Now I'm just playing around. Spooky night. But Halloween's over.